Lots to talk about. Joining us now, Rob Wittman, Dr. Rob Wittman, Congressman, 1st District Republican in Virginia. He's also the chairman of the subcommittee on sea power readiness, so he's very versed in naval issues and readiness issues, and he is joining us now. Dr. Rob Wittman, good to have you with us, sir.
Good morning, John. Great to be with you.
Dr. Wittman, the president bringing home 3 prisoners actually yesterday at 2:30 a.m. at Andrews Air Force Base. Mike Pompeo went over there not knowing if he was going to get him back. I mean, it was kind of a mysterious trip. Kim Jong-un, they were able to negotiate that, getting these 3 prisoners back. Now the president announcing yesterday, Dr. Wittman, that his summit with Kim Jong-un, this historic summit, will be on June 12th in Singapore. What is your analysis of the whole situation here, sir?
Well, I think all of these are positive developments. I think seeing with great interest how Kim Jong-un is reacting in this whole progression of how we're getting to what I think is a very substantive point in negotiations on what to do or what they will do with their nuclear capability there. I think this is a great development there with the hostages being released, coming back to the United States. I think that's a great first step. It's a serious outreach by President Kim Jong-un. The meeting is now set. I think this is a very good goodwill gesture on part of Kim Jong-un. I think it lays the groundwork for showing that Kim Jong-un at least appears to be serious about going into these negotiations, being able to achieve something. I am always skeptical of the Kim dynasty there because of their past words, many times not leading up to action. But I think all of these things are leading in the right direction. And again, I think the significant element of what we should take from yesterday is that this is an action taken by Kim Jong-un. While in the scheme of things, at least moving in the right direction. I think that's exactly where we need to be. I think it hopefully lends itself to more opportunities for North Korea to do what's necessary, and that is to get rid of their nuclear weapons. But again, good first step. I am glad that the meeting has been set. I think doing it in Singapore at a neutral site is the better way to do it. I hold out some optimism for these talks. The key is, and I think the president will do that. The key is I think we have to be very, very skeptical of the action side of this. I think we can go in and lay down the groundwork on what would happen in these negotiations, what we expect out of North Korea. I think you have to set those expectations high. And then I think you have to verify. I think there has to be a lot done by North Korea to show that they can be considered trustworthy, not only by the United States but by the rest of the world. But this is I think very, very good developments moving in the right direction, and I think it lays the groundwork for some substantive achievements in this meeting with Kim Jong-un and President Trump. So I am cautiously optimistic, always skeptical of the Kim family based on their history, and adamant that whatever comes out of that meeting has to be that we verify actions by the North Koreans before we lift a single part of these sanctions, before we allow anything positive to happen that would benefit North Korea. They have to show beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're doing the things that they would promise to do as part of whatever agreement comes out of this meeting in Singapore. And hopefully they can do that. I think the president will be very serious about what the expectations are, and clearly communicating that to Kim Jong-un, and then clearly communicating to him that nothing will change until we are convinced and that actions are verified based upon what agreements may come out of this meeting.
Let me ask you this, Congressman Rob Wittman. What is it that you think brought Kim Jong-un to the table? What are the series of events here that has made him obviously moderate some of his language, but also going and meeting with South Korean leaders, perhaps finally bringing an official end to the Korean War, that there was actually a ceasefire done in 1953. It's never really been officially ended. So he has this massive, what it looks like, buildup of arms. He does all these tests, and now he's willing to come to the table. Why?
Well, I think a variety of different forces have, I think, pushed Kim Jong-un to see that really his only viable course is to come to the table, is to seriously negotiate the nuclear weapons inventory that North Korea is building. I think they see where they are economically. I think they see where their people are, and while like I said, I'm somewhat skeptical of Kim Jong-un. I think he sees that the only other long-term viable place for him to go is not to be isolated, but to be part of the world community, to have to deal with people around him. I think that the president's effort in applying maximum pressure works. I think, too, the president's ability to work with Xi Jinping in China and really get China to work seriously as a partner to put pressure on North Korea, I think is one of those linchpins for this, because ultimately, the vast majority of commerce is done between North Korea and China, and without China's cooperation, without China saying we're serious about this, without China going to Kim Jong-un and saying, hey, here's the deal, we are going to not provide continued trading relationships with you, whether it's fuel, whether it's food. And you see recently, just this past week, Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un meeting. So, there's some serious back and forth there. I think all those series of events have led North Korea to a point where they have realized that they're going to have to be able to have a serious conversation about their nuclear weapons arsenal, and ultimately where they stand with being able to interact with other countries, whether it's through trade, whether it's through just regular diplomatic means, that they have to give up their nuclear weapons arsenal in order to do that. So I think a procession of those efforts and actions have led to that. And I think, too, that Kim Jong-un, looks at what's happened here in the United States and saying, there's a pretty clear record. When this president says he is going to do something, he does it.
Right.
And you look time after time after time again, and I think with what the president has said about how the United States is going to deal with North Korea, I think they look at it and go, it's for real. And this effort of maximum pressure is going to happen. We have a choice. We can either be further isolated, we can see our country further down the road of demise, we can see our citizens suffering. Not that he, I think, really cared about his citizens suffering, but I think it's starting to affect his military. We've seen things or impact on his military. He knows that the only way that he can maintain power is to be able to maintain allegiance by his military members. I think he sees that potentially going away with where his country is, and sees the only way for him to survive, and again, for him it's regime survival, is to be able to negotiate concerning their long-term interest, which doesn't include continued buildup of nuclear capability.
We're with Congressman Rob Wittman, Republican 1st District of Virginia. That's around the Central Virginia area. For those of you that don't know, Congressman Wittman, he's a Republican. He's also the chairman of the subcommittee on, basically, we call it Sea Power Readiness. It has a very long name, but he's very involved in the preparation of the U.S. Navy and the aquatic Marines, and it's a lot that he's involved in. Congressman Wittman, let's get to the president pulling out of the Iran Accords. And there was an interview done a few days ago by CNN. It was actually a great interview by Wolf Blitzer, which, just because of CNN would, I guess, rather talk about Stormy Daniels. They never gave it any play. But he interviewed the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia. And I cover the Middle East, as you know. And it was a fascinating interview Congressman, that just, it never got any play. And the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia said, look, they were developing nuclear missiles, and they were getting the money to continue to fund terrorism. And basically, if they're caught continuing to develop a nuclear weapon, then we're going to get one. And he also didn't rule out a preemptive strike. He said, we're going to protect our cities. And when Wolf Blitzer asked them about their relationship with Iran, he said, well, they're shooting missiles at our cities as we speak. That's not exactly a gesture of friendship. So, I mean, when you look at the Saudis' view, their view is this is a real threat to them, and they're going to take whatever action they need. How do you respond to the Saudi statement of they might actually invoke military action against Iran in relation to what the president did in pulling out of the agreement?
Well, John, I think what you've seen leading up to the president making the decision to get out of the agreement is Iran's, actions there in the Middle East. I mean, you saw the skirmish yesterday between Israel and Iran, with Iran firing missiles into Israel. You've seen Iran through proxy and the Houthis essentially attacking Saudi Arabia. You see Iran through Hezbollah going into not only areas in the Middle East, but in certain ways helping destabilize many areas there in the Middle East. Iran's purpose is to be the dominant power in the Middle East. So it's not just in what they plan on doing in developing a nuclear weapon, but it's what they're doing now to destabilize those areas. And that's why you hear Saudi Arabia saying, hey, listen, Iran has ill intents in the region. Why you see Prime Minister Netanyahu lay out a tremendous amount of information, all of his factual information about what Iran is doing. I think when you add all those things up, you have to say you can't be complacent about this, and you can't not say that we have to push to do more to hold Iran's feet to the fire. And obviously the deal, as it was originally negotiated, falls far short of that. I voted against that Iran nuclear deal because I thought it didn't come anywhere close to doing the things that were needed to be done to, in the long term, keep Iran from becoming a nuclear power. And I do think that while folks have said, well, the inspectors have said and others have said that Iran is complying with the deal, if the deal is not a good deal, whether or not they're complying with it doesn't make it substantive for them showing that they're not doing the things necessary, we think, in the long term, with building a nuclear capability. And it's this, John. It's Iran has shown they have no interest in being a peaceful force in the region. Their effort at every turn, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's the Houthis, whether it's with Israel, are seeking every day to destabilize the region, seeking to be the dominant force in the region. So they're seeking that out, while at the same time, I believe, still working in other ways to develop a nuclear capability. So, all those actions lead one to say you've got to do more if Iran is going to be held accountable in the region, and if not, then all you're doing is enabling them to continue to eventually light the Middle East on fire. I would argue right now they've lit a number of small fires. Those fires eventually, I think, join in with each other across the Middle East, and then we'll have further conflict there, and then that forces the issue too about whether or not the United States should become involved there. I mean, we're already working in areas in Iraq, in Syria. If this expands, why wouldn't you want to try to do things now to keep that from happening? And again, the deal was a bad deal, and even if they are complying with a bad deal, it's still not the pathway to make sure that the Middle East isn't destabilized by Iran. And everything that we see leads one to say that that's what Iran is trying to do. So I think it was trying to force the issue on Iran. And I think our European allies that are part of this have to look at this and go, wow, we have to do more to get a substantive agreement with Iran. And if not, you're going to see Iran continue down this road, whether that agreement is there or not. So why not force this and bring this issue to the forefront and really get everyone in the region to say, no, this isn't right. We've got to relook at this, and we've got to do that now.
Congressman, what you just said was probably, in 3 minutes, one of the most sober, concise analysis of why the president pulled out of the JCPOA, the Iran deal, as it's known, than I've heard. I want to compliment you on that. Very, very succinct. Thank you. We're just about out of time for this segment, but I want to thank Rob Wittman for being with us. Now, Rob Wittman just officially chairs the House Armed Services Subcommittee on Sea Power and Protection Forces. For more information on Rob Wittman, you can go to whitman.house.gov, whitman.house.gov, and he's also up for re-election for another term in November. He represents Central Virginia, the 1st District of Virginia, and he is a Republican, part of the majority. Congressman Wittman, thank you for being with us. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Don. You and your listeners have a great weekend, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.